Like, yo, you're
Chill
probably
now.
just as confused as I am as what the fuck is going on with the Oregon under attack hashtag that's currently trending.
Alright, peeps.
So, I ended up
You
bringing
need
up
to shut
Like, yo,
up
four.
you're
or
probably just as
or
confused as I
you
am
just
as what the fuck.
What's up?
you just start shutting it out like all over Twitter and shit.
Ah, you're no fun.
Yeah,
Fine,
okay,
fine.
fine. You talk about that. Yeah, okay, whatever. You do what your own thing. I'll do my own thing. You just talk about it. I'm gonna be fucking.
Ah, humph. Keep in mind, you're gonna be heard. Alright, let's see what we got here. Give it a few minutes to set this up, then, I guess. I forgot the link.
Oh, really? You're fine. You're fine. Just link it all over poll or whatever. Just cuck their shit up.
Hmm. There we go. Whatever. Alright, so. I've got a few tabs to take a peek and hopefully figure out what the fuck's going on. There. First one, of course, will be the video. Oh, there we go. That helps the problem. And we'll watch it together. With maybe a little bit of commentary by me, depending on it. By the way, whenever they're talking about BLM, they're meaning the Bureau of Land Management, most likely. That's what I'm presuming.
Not Black Lives
Blue
Matter.
Lives Matter.
Not Black Lives
Not
Matter.
because they don't.
That's right.
No comment. Alright, let's play this video. Since you got a few people looking into it. And we'll see how it goes.
Oh shit.
It's gonna be one of the
Got
tougher
movement in the
videos I've
chat.
had to make.
Zy Venrix is in here. He's gonna go full on all our asses.
Start off with my family.
Yep.
Fucking Zy's the fucking best. Oh shit, we got Pterodax. He's gonna come
Oh,
and
yeah.
Love
troll
you.
these motherfuckers on the hashtag, and he's gonna tell people we need
Beautiful
leaders
wife.
now.
This reads like a fucking suicide
Tell me-
note so far.
I know it does.
I know I never said it enough. I'm so proud of the mother you've become.
Let me turn this shit up so y'all can hear it better.
I'm so proud of you.
Alright.
You're such a good mom to our girls. My daughters, Maddie and Lily. I love you so much. You're only 3 and 5 now, and you have no idea.
So sad.
Poor bastard.
This is a daily harassment that I
Your
receive
daddy
on
swore
Twitter
an
every
oath.
day from random folks like him. No, I'm just kidding.
Kick.
You swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution.
Keep in mind, I'm currently watching that particular video that seems to have kicked a whole bunch of the shit
Against
out.
all enemies,
Watch
foreign
it.
and domestic. And that's why he couldn't be with you on Christmas. That's why I can't be with you on New Year's.
Oh man, he's so fucking
I miss
sad.
you so much.
Wow.
You need to be good for your mom.
Holy crap, you couldn't be with your family on Christmas.
The oppression and the tyranny that's taken place here in Oregon. We know it's taken place all across the U.S. The Bundy Ranch was prime example. And And we, the people, need to take a stand. The Hammond family, they are not terrorists. Even the judge was sick to their stomach over the thing. Tried to give them a sentence of 3 months and 1 year. And this oppressive, tyrannical government, who really has no jurisdiction right here. This is Harney County's land. The
Yeah.
Hammonds were not tried by a jury of their peers. There's an indictment with no signatures on it. This is a cruel and unusual punishment. But this federal government comes in here and says, no, that's not enough. They need to do a minimum of 5 years.
Important to note, federal governments and state governments are
So
different
after
things.
they did their time and they were set out with their families, they're out living their lives thinking it's all over with. And now they're being ordered to come back and finish out up to 5 years. And it's disgusting.
In summation, they were already punished by the state
White-
government.
He's so old he may die in there. And I'm hoping he sees this video. Because it's real simple, Dwight. You want to die in prison, labeled
Oh,
as
wow.
a terrorist by these oppressors?
Someone is trying to. Someone
wanna
is trying
die
to
out
tie
here
this
with
whole
us
Oregon thing
as a
to
free man.
Gamergate.
I want to die a free man. If you've sworn that oath, it is not just to protect and defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, when it's convenient for you, or as long as that defense doesn't include death. That's not how our independence was won. Very last sentence on the Declaration of Independence. This is what our founding fathers said. This is what they believed in, and this is what they set forth for us. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. More than anything, I want to be with my family. I do not want to be up here having to deal with this. But if you do not spearhead this and take a stand, it's going to set a new precedent across the U.S. They get stronger and think they can continue to go around and bully we the people. But when we unite and you take that stand,
Let's crank this
there's
shit
no
up a bit.
stopping us.
Crank this shit out.
Expect it to suddenly crank up in volume.
This Hammond family has been so oppressed, they've even been threatened with harsher prison conditions if they get caught communicating with people like myself or Ammon Bundy, who spent hours and hours and hours begging and pleading with the sheriff, trying to educate them and empower them, letting them know this is the supreme law of the land. The damn Constitution that you swore an oath to protect and defend. A sheriff who is supposed to be here to protect and defend his people. He now has an outside entity coming in and oppressing his people, and he is not going to stand
That was
with
on me.
them.
Sorry.
Their enemies.
Is that what he's saying? Oh, this fucked
We've
up.
gone through all the avenues of approach. legal binding documents. A redress of grievances been filed and ignored. Petitions filed and ignored. What other choice do we have than to stand? I've had to do a lot of soul searching up here. And I'm with good people who've also had to do a lot of soul searching. Some people that have been doing this soul searching for years. And I am 100% willing to lay my life down to fight against tyranny in this country. Does that mean I want war? Does that make me some sort of a warmonger? No.
America. Fuck yeah.
Thomas Paine
I like that.
said it the best. I prefer peace, but if trouble must come, let it come in my time, so that my children may know peace. There is a smear campaign going on out there pushing lies and propaganda, saying that the Hammonds just want to give up. They want to turn themselves in. No, they don't. They don't want to go in. They don't want to deal with this.
I can confirm
They've
on
been
that
threatened.
one.
They're scared.
They're already joining the
They
militia,
don't
so
want
guess what?
conflict. Stuart Rhodes, the founder of Oath Keepers, saying, well, they want to turn themselves in, so they have their right to turn themselves in. By your logic, I guess that we shouldn't offer any help to these veterans that want to commit suicide. Just let them start their 9mm. Because it's their right.
I'll tell you this right now, sister. Your clicking is really fucking
More
annoying.
than helping the
Keep your
ones
fucking mouth
that are
shut,
willing to
microphone.
stand up for themselves, we
Sorry
should
about
be
that.
willing to stand up for the ones that are too afraid or scared or oppressed to help themselves. You take that stand. Out here in Harney County, Oregon, this used to be one of the most thriving economies in the entire state. This was the best back in the 80s. I'm here parked next to a mill. What has happened? The federal government, an oppressing force, comes in.
Yeah.
Some
Back in the
kids
80s,
go
back
off to
in
college
my day,
and get their degree.
1952.
The kids that have never had their hands dirty, and now they get these jobs at the BLM, and they're going to tell these ranchers, these people who are more in tune with the ground and with the earth out here, they're going to come out here and tell them how to run their show, how to ranch,
Jack Flag.
how many head of cattle they can have, where they can go, where they can't go, on their own damn land. That is tyranny. Now you have one of the largest BLM offices. You have 70%, 60 to 70% of your population here either employed or on some sort of an entitlement by this government. Those people don't represent Harney County. I've gone out and met the people of Harney County. Been out here trying to win the hearts and minds while all these slander, nasty campaigns going on trying to say that we're out here harassing the citizens. We're following people, parking at their house. Does that even make sense? That I would come up here, I would miss Christmas with my family, miss weeks on end with to be with them, to come up here just to harass people in Oregon? While I'm up here trying to win the hearts and minds of these people? The success of us as a nation depends on us uniting as people. I do not want to drive you off. We need real men here. Men and women. Americans who have the intestinal fortitude to come here and take a stand and say enough is enough.
I'm the one talking.
I'm just letting this guy talk.
We need to unite. Back to my family.
Is this guy
I love
like
you.
like an actor?
And no
or
matter what
something? 'Cause
happens.
he's
No.
fucking good.
No matter what lies are
Even
pushed
amazing if
out,
He was. It turned out that he did some acting.
just know that I stood for
Would
something.
be funny.
Don't
Yep.
let it be in vain.
All right.
I love you.
All right. Apparently, he's one of the ones that ended up joining in this particular issue, as it were. From what I've heard,
That guy's a terrorist.
no, he's not. From what I've heard, approximately 150 people ended up trespassing on a BLM building in order to peacefully protest an issue involving the Hammond family. There's been a long history involving the Hammond family in that particular branch of the government because they've spent quite a bit of time going back and forth on it.
Very interesting. Tell me more.
Well, here's the next bit. There is that you can look at it with the blog post. Here's the press release on the Bundy Ranch block spot.
Let's do it.
Posted upon January 1st, 2016. With great concern and love, much consideration from prayer, I come to you, Harney County, Sheriff of Oregon David M. Ward, Rancher Stephen Dwight Hammond, and Rancher Stephen Dwight Lincoln Hammond, Jr. I, Cliven D. Bundy, have been involved for several weeks in the background striving to understand and comprehend your dilemmas in Harney County, Oregon. I understand that the grass that was burnt on each side of the fence was grazing rights that had been created through beneficial use, one side of the fence being private property and the other side of the fence being private property rights. The fires that were set were for a good purpose and had good results. The United States Justice Department has no jurisdiction or authority within the state of Oregon, County of Harney, over this type of ranch management. These lands are not under U.S. treaties or commerce, they are not Article 4 territories, and Congress does not have unlimited power. These lands have been admitted into statehood and are part of the great state of Oregon and citizens of Harney County. Enjoy this fullness of the protections of the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution limits United States government. It is my suggestion, Stephen Hammond, that you go and check yourself into Harney County Jail asking for protective custody. It is my suggestion, Dwight Hammond, that you go and check yourself into Harney County Jail asking for protective custody. It is my suggestion, Harney County Sheriff David Ward, accept these two ranchers into your jail. Notify the United States Solicitor in Washington, D.C. that you have these two ranchers in Harney County Jail and that they will remain there indefinitely under your protective custody and the protection of we, the people of Harney County, and we, the people of the United States of America. I suggest an evidentiary hearing or a grand jury be formed by we, the people. I feel that this action is immediately important, that it should be taken place before 10 a.m. Saturday, January 2nd, 2016. I will hold these suggestions private until that time that I will release this letter to those having state and county jurisdictions and to the media. Unfortunately for him, it ended up hitting about the first. Sucks to be him. Anyways, this is a bit of the background that ended up leading to the situation where where there's going to be a narrative that these people that are involved are terrorists. So,
Terrorist.
supposedly. But
What is an act of terrorism?
anyways,
Shit.
this is the other related bit that is going to be important for background. Hammond family, facts and events. The Harney Basin, where the Hammond Ranch is established, was settled in the 1870s. The valley was settled by multiple ranchers and was known to have run over 300,000 head of cattle. These ranchers developed a state-of-the-art irrigated system to water the meadows, and it soon became a favorite stopping place for migrating birds on their annual trek north. Point AB. In 1908, President Theodore Roosevelt, misspelled by the way, in a political scheme, creates an Indian reservation around the Malheur, Mud, and Harney Lakes and declared it as a preserve and breeding ground for native birds. Later, this Indian reservation, without Indians, became the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. Point A. In 1964, the Hammonds purchased their ranch in the Harney Basin. The purchase included approximately 6,000 acres of private property, 4 grazing rights on public land, and a small ranch house and 3 water rights. The ranch is around 53 miles south of Burns, Oregon. Fact A1. This guy's really, really shit at setting this up, by the way. By the 1970s, nearly all the ranches adjacent to the Blitzen Valley were purchased by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and added to the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. The refuge covers over 180,000 acres and stretches over 45 miles long and 37 miles wide. The expansion of the refuge grew and surrounds to the Hammonds Ranch. Being approached many times by the FDUS, the Hammonds refuse to sell. Other ranchers also choose not to sell. A2. During the 1970s, the Fish and Wildlife Service, in conjunction with the Bureau of Land Management, took a different approach to get the ranchers to sell. Ranchers were told that grazing was detrimental to wildlife and must be reduced. 32 out of 53 permits were revoked, and many ranchers were forced to leave. Grazing fees were raised significantly for those who were allowed to remain. Refuge personnel took over the irrigation system, claiming it as their own. A3. By 1980, a conflict was well on its way over water allocations on the adjacent privately owned Sylvies Plain. The FDUS wanted to acquire the ranch lands on the Sylvies Plain to add their already vast holdings. Refuge personnel diverted the water to bypassing the vast meadowheads, directing the water into the rising Malheur Lakes. Within a few short years, the surface area of the lakes doubled. 31 ranches on the Sylvies Plains were flooded. Homes, corrals, barns, and grazeland were washed away and destroyed. The ranchers that once fought to keep the FWS from taking their land, now broke and destroyed, begged the FWS to acquire their useless ranches. In 1989, the waters began to recede, and now the once thriving privately owned Sylvies Plains are a proud part of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, claimed by the FWS. A4. By the 1990s, the Hammonds were one of the very few ranchers that still owned private property adjacent to the refuge. Susie Hammond, in an effort to make sense of what was going on, began compiling facts about the refuge. In a hidden public record, she found a study that was done by the FWS in 1975. The study showed that no-use policies of the FWS on the refuge were causing the wildlife to leave the refuge and move to private property. The study showed that the private property adjacent to the Malheur private refuge produced 4 times more ducks and geese than the refuge itself did. It also showed that the migrating birds were 13 times more likely to land on private property than on the refuge. When Susie brought this to the attention of the FWS and refuge personnel, her and her family became the subject of a long train of abuses and corruptions. Fact B. In the early 1990s, the Hammonds filed on livestock water source and obtained a deed for the water right from the state of Oregon. When the Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service found out that the Hammonds obtained new water rights near the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, they were agitated and became belligerent and vindictive towards the Hammonds. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service challenged the Hammonds to right to the water in an Oregon State Circuit course. The court found that the Hammonds legally obtained rights to the water in concordance to state law, and therefore the use of water belongs to the Hammonds. Fact C. In August 1994, the BLM and the FWS illegally began building a fence around the Hammonds water source. Owning the water rights and knowing that their cattle relied on that water source daily, the Hammonds tried to stop the building of the fence. This is a long one, by the way. The BLM and the FWS called the Harney County Sheriff Department and had Dwight Hammond, the father, arrested and charged with distributing and interfering with federal officials or federal contractors, 2 counts, each a felony. He spent 1 night in the Deschutes County Jail in Bend and a 2nd night behind bars in Portland before he was hauled before a federal magistrate and released without bail. A hearing on the charges were postponed and the federal judge never set another date. Fact D. The FWS also began restricting access to upper pieces of Hammond's private property. In order to get to the upper part of the Hammond's ranch, they had to go on a road that went through the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. The FWS began barricading the road and threatening the Hammonds if they drove through it. The Hammonds removed the barricades and gates and continued to use their right of access. The road was proven later to be owned by the county of Harney. This further enraged the BLM and FWS. Again, a reminder, BLM is not Black Lives Matter, but the Bureau of Land Management.
Where my country gone, Thidrin? Where my
Who
country
knows?
gone?
Shit's
You
crazy.
can take
Cuck
your
my
fucking
shit up.
water. What is that shit?
It's fucked up.
Fucking dumb. That is fucking extortion. That's fucked up.
That's what they tried.
That is their
They-
fucking land.
Keep in mind, they did this to 50 ranching families and have succeeded on most of them.
That is
Fact E.
so fucking dumb. Oh,
Shortly after the road and water disputes, the BLM and FWS arbitrarily revoked the Hammond's upper grazing permit without any given cause, court proceeding, or court ruling. As a traditional fence-out state, Oregon requires no obligation on the part of an owner to keep his or her livestock within a fence or to maintain control over the movement of the livestock. The Hammonds intend to still use their private property for grazing. However, they were informed that a federal judge ruled in a federal court that the federal government did not have to observe Oregon fence-out law. Those laws are for the people, not for them. Fact M. The Hammonds were forced to either build and maintain miles of fences or be restricted from the use of their private property. Cutting their ranch in almost half, they could not afford to fence the land, so the cattle were removed. Alright, there's a picture of the father. G. The Hammonds experienced many years of financial hardship due to the ranch being diminished. The Hammonds had to sell their ranch and home in order to purchase another property that had enough grass to feed their cattle. This property included 2 grazing rights on public land. Those were also arbitrarily revoked later. Continuing. H. The owner of the Hammonds' original ranch passed away from a heart attack, and the Hammonds made a trade for the ranch back. I. In the early fall of 2001, Stephen Hammond, the son of Dwight Hammond that was just shown, called the fire department, informing them that he was going to be performing a routine prescribed burn on their ranch. Later that day, he started a prescribed fire on their private property. The fire went onto public land and burned 127 acres of land. The Hammonds put the fire out themselves. There's no communication about the burn from the federal government to the Hammonds at that time. Prescribed fires are a common method that Native Americans and ranchers have used in the area to increase the health and productivity of the land for many centuries. J. In 2006, a massive lightning storm started multiple fires that joined together, inflaming the countryside. To prevent the fire from destroying their winter range and possibly their home, Steve Hammond, son, started a backfire on their private property. The backfire was successful in putting out the lightning fires that had covered thousands of acres within a short period of time. This backfire saved much of the range and vegetation needed to feed the cattle throughout the winter. Stephen's mother, Susan Hammond, said, "The backfire worked perfectly. It put out the fire, saved the range, and possibly our home." J1. The next day, federal agents went to the Harney County Sheriff's Office and filed a police report making accusation against Dwight and Stephen Hammond for starting the backfire. A few days after the backfire, a range-con from Burns District BLM office asked Steve if he would meet him in town and French Glen for a coffee. Stephen accepted. When leaving, he was arrested by the Harney County Sheriff Dave Schlerup and BLM manager, organizer, Sheriff Steve Schlerup, then ordered him to go to the ranch and bring back his father. Both Dwight and Stephen were booked and on multiple Oregon state charges. The Harney County District Attorney reviewed the accusation, evidence, and charges, and determined that the accusations against Dwight and Stephen Harmon did not warrant prosecution and dropped all the charges. K. In 2011, 5 years after the police report was taken, the U.S. Attorney's Office accused Dwight and Stephen Hammond of completely different charges. They accused them of being terrorist under the Federal Anti-Terrorism Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996. This act carries a minimum sentence of 5 years in prison and a maximum sentence of death. Dwight and Stephen's mug shots were put all over the news the next week, posing them as arsonists. Susan Hammond, wife and mother, said, "I would walk down the street or go in the store. People I had known for years would take extreme measures to avoid me." Here's the son, Stephen Hammond. L. Yeah, this is a bit of a read, but it's worth it.
This is fucking horrible.
Yeah, this is a bit of the background as to why.
For no fucking reason.
They want that land. That's what it is.
Yeah, they want that land, those motherfuckers.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
L.
I need to get some coffee. I'll be
You
back.
get some coffee,
Yeah.
I'll keep reading. Hopefully I'm not boring y'all to sleep. Shortly
This is
after
the
the
reason why
sentencing.
Big government is a big problem.
Yes. Capital Press ran a story about the Hammonds. A person who identified as Greg Allum posted 3 comments on the article, calling the ranchers clowns who endangered firefighters and other people in the area while burning valuable rangeland. Greg Allum, a retired BLM heavy equipment operator, soon called Capital Press to complain that he had not made those comments and request that they be taken down from the website. Capital Press removed the comments. A search of the Internet Protocol address associated with the comments revealed it is owned by the BLM's office in Denver, Colorado. Allum said he is friends with the Hammonds and was alerted to the comments by neighbors who knew he wouldn't have written them. I feel bad for them. They lost a lot, and they're going to lose more, Allum said of the Rangers. They're not terrorists. There's this hatred in the BLM forum, and I don't get it. The retired BLM employee said. Jody Whale, Deputy State Director for Communications at BLM's Oregon office, indicated to the report that if one of their agents falsified the comment, they would keep it private and not inform the public. M. In September 2006, why is this not in chronological order? I'll never know. Dwight and Susan Hammond's home was raided. The agents informed the Hammonds that they were looking for evidence that would connect them to the fires. The Hammonds later found out that a boot print and tire tracks were found near one of the many fires. No matching boots or tires were found in the Hammonds' home or on their property. Susan Hammond, the wife, later said, I have never felt so violated in my life. We are ranchers, not criminals. Stephen Hammond openly maintains his testimony that he started the backfire to save winter grass from being destroyed and that the backfire ended up working so well it put out the fire entirely altogether. N. During the trial's proceedings, federal court Judge Michael Hogan did not allow time for certain testimonies and evidence into the trial, which she spelled as trail, that would exonerate the Hammonds. Federal prosecuting attorney Frank Papagni was given full access for 6 days. He had ample time to use any evidence or testimony that strengthened the demonization of the Hammonds. The Hammonds' attorney was only allowed 1 day. Much of the facts about the fires, land, and why Hammonds acted the way they did was not allowed into the proceedings and was not heard by the jury. For example, Judge Hogan did not allow time for the jury to hear or review certified scientific findings that the fires improved the health and productivity of the land, or that Hammonds had been subject to vindictive behavior by multiple federal agencies for years. Fact O. Federal attorneys Frank Papagni hunted down a witness that was not mentally capable to be a credible witness. Dusty Hammond, grandson and nephew, testified that Stephen told him to start a fire. He was 13 at the time and 24 when he testified, 11 years later. At 24, Dusty had been suffering with mental problems for many years. He had estranged his family, including his mother. Judge Hogan noted that Dusty's memories as a 13-year-old boy were not clear or credible. He allowed the prosecution to continually use Dusty's testimony anyway. When speaking to the Hammonds about this testimony, they understood that Dusty was manipulated and expressed nothing but love for their troubled grandson. So, there we go. Point P. Judge Michael Hogan and Frank Papagni tampered with the jury many times throughout the proceedings, including during the selection process. Hogan and Papagni only allowed people on the jury who did not understand the customs and culture of the ranchers or how the land is used and cared for in the Diamond Valley. All the jurors had to drive back and forth to Pendleton every day. Some drove more than 2 hours each way. By day 8, they were exhausted and expressed desires to be home. On the final day, Judge Hogan kept pushing them to make a verdict. Several times during the deliberation, Judge Hogan pushed them to make a decision. Judge Hogan would also not allow the jury to hear what punishment could be imposed upon an individual that is convicted as a terrorist under the 1996 Act. The jury, not understanding the customs and cultures of the era, influenced by the prosecutors for 6 days, very exhausted, pushed for a verdict by the judge, unaware of the ramification of convicting someone as a terrorist, made a verdict, and went home. Point Q. June 22nd, 2012, Dwight and Stephen were found guilty of starting both the 2001 and 2006 fires by the jury. However, the federal courts convicted them both as terrorists under the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act. Judge Hogan sentenced Dwight's father to 3 months in prison and Stephen's son to 12 months in federal prison. They are also stipulated to pay $400,000 according to the Bureau of Land Management. Hogan overruling the minimum terrorist sentence, commenting that if the full 5 years were required, it would be a violation of the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. The day of the sentencing, Judge Hogan retired as a federal judge. In his officer, the staff served chocolate cake in the courtroom. My apologies. Points are... On January 4th, 2013, Dwight and Stephen reported to prison. They fulfilled their sentence. Dwight 3 months, Stephen 12 months. Dwight was released in March of 2013, and Stephen January of 2014. Point S. Sometime in June 2014, Rhonda Carges, field manager for the BLM, and her husband, Chad Carges, refuge manager for the Malheur Wildlife Refuge, which surrounds their Harmon Ranch, along with attorney Frank Papagni, exemplifying further vindictive behavior by filing an appeal with the 9th District Federal Court seeking Dwight's and Stephen's return to federal prison for the entire 5 years. Point T. In October 2015, the Ninth District Court resentenced Dryden and Stephen, requiring them to return to prison for several more years. Stephen, 46, has a wife and 3 children. Dwight, 74, will leave Susan, also 74, to be alone after 55 years of marriage. If he survives, he will be 79 when he is released. During the court proceedings, the Hammonds were forced to grant the BLM first right of refusal. If the Hammonds ever sold their ranch, they would have to sell to the BLM. Dwight and Stephen are ordered to report to the federal prison again on January 4th, 2016 to begin their resentencing. Both their wives will have to manage the ranch for several years without them. To date, they have paid $200,000 to the BLM, and the remaining $200,000 must be paid before the end of this year. If the Hammonds cannot pay the fines to the BLM, they will be forced to sell the ranch to the BLM or face further prosecution. Notes. S. Rhonda Carges, resource field manager for the BLM, is the wife of Chad Carges, refuge manager for the Marshfield Wildlife Refuge, which we've gone over. Rhonda specifically deals with all the BLM issues relating to the area in and around the Hammonds property, including grazing denial. Her husband just happens to be the person in charge of all the issues surrounding the Hammonds Ranch, such as water and access. Special note B. Soon after the water rights dispute, the federal government influenced the state of Oregon to change their water law in favor of federal agencies. Wildlife is now considered in the state of Oregon as an accepted beneficial use for government agencies only. Special note K. Being convicted as terrorists made the Hammonds felons. They have been stripped of their rights to have guns. The Hammonds live 53 miles from the closest town and have no practical way of defending themselves or their cattle. Several times they have watched baby calves be eaten by predators and could do nothing to prevent it. The conclusion. The abuses and corruptions affecting people like Hammonds are symptoms of a more encompassing problem. Government employees, full-time and elected, have changed their culture from one of service to, in respect for the people, to the role of being masters. On the subject of the land, it is evident that the government employees are no longer assisting the people in claiming, using, and defending property. Instead, they have become the people's competitor to the benefits of the land and are willing to use force on those they erroneously compete against. The federal government adversely controls 582 million acres of the western land, 51% of the entire western landmass. They also have begun recently claiming over 72% of western resources such as the subsurface minerals, forestry, and waters. This is in comparison to the 4.29% federally controlled land in the east. The impact of the federal government controlling the land and resources inside the western states is hard to calculate. The negative impact on the people can be seen economically, politically, and socially. In order for any people to survive, let alone prosper, it takes the land and resources to do it. Everything we eat, the clothing we wear, the homes we live in, the cars we drive, and so on, come from the earth. All physical comfort and prosperity originates from the earth. Individuals composing the federal government, understanding the origination of wealth, are reserving those resources for themselves and are willing to use force to retain them. The ramifications of their actions are slowly forcing the people of the West into poverty. Due to the fact that people cannot survive without land and resource, the federal government's action in administering the lands for their own benefit will be the cause of public discontent and unrest until it is corrected. The solution is very simple. The land and resources must be available to its rightful owners, the people. This can be done peacefully if the states and counties would check and balance the federal government as designed. When this happens, the people will begin to prosper, and much of the economical, political, and social problem of the West will diminish. Prosperity, peace, and tranquility will be the results. Thank you. Ammon Bundy and the Bundy family. This is a source of these, which is a few of the blog posts of it, if you wanted to go into further detail. Whew. Give me a moment, and I will continue with the next bit. There are currently 2 poll threads on 8chan about it. Unfortunately, I tried to look into 4chan's poll, but they are getting slaughtered. They are pretty much slid off the count. They are slid. Here are the 2 threads. One of them is about a false flag that was originating around the time that the original thread came about. One was about the original video that I just watched at the beginning and the resulting conversation that came from it.
I got some coffee now. They showed some pictures of the militia members. What do they look
That's
like?
cool. That I don't know yet. That's what I'd like to see.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat.
The link's in the chat.
Let's find out.
Yeah, just look. Go in there and
Nah.
wrestle some jimmies in the chat.
Yeah. Give me a minute. Where is it at?
Yeah. Go to the.
Where you at?
Your stream. You gotta open up the stream, bro.
I have
Yeah,
opened up the
yeah,
stream, you
yeah.
goober.
Some fresh Colombian coffee.
Screw you.
Are you the one that can't drink coffee?
I can drink coffee.
Oh, okay.
Alright, let's see if I can see it. Ah, come on, don't crash on me. Toss that. Toss that. Yeah.
Watch the stream with no survivors.
There. Oh boy, there you go. There you go. That's apparently the Militiaman leaders, and yeah, right.
They're so MLG.
Yeah, sure they are. I somehow don't believe it. I'll show it anyways, just for a bit of humor's sake. But I promise you, these are not the Militiamen. Fucking.
Right now.
Yeah, I somehow doubt that Moonman, Sam Hyde, and Ben Garrison are involved in this one. Nah, they're too peaceful. It's too peaceful. There's not enough gunning.
Where's the other members? They said there's 11 of them, right?
Yeah, there's more than that.
There's 11 of them.
All right.
That'd be funny if Ben Garrison was really down there.
Yeah, you goobers.
I do love the OC. It's outstanding.
Yeah, the OC was
Definitely
pretty nice.
outstanding. We need to people need to make some Moonman OC on fucking this shit right now, Oregon.
Oh, for sure. One thing that's important to note are the current narratives that are being deployed. One of them is that they're all terrorists for doing what they're doing right this moment. Another one is that Pol is attempting to militarize the resulting militia whenever there was a big, nasty amount of sliding and supposed troop movements. Anyone worth their salt would know that you wouldn't be doing it on a Chan without crypto in that manner. It is done by a bloody tourist that doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's completely unprofessional. It looks more of a case of shills and trolls rather than any actual military action, even militia. Other bits that is currently being done. It's claiming that feds are involved with the action, specifically people like Cillian. He has commented on it. That does not mean he is involved with it. So attempting to associate with him with the group in an attempt at guilt by association demonstrates your own ignorance. In addition to that, at the same time, a bloody tag on Twitter known as, what was that one called? Oregon Under Attack is formed by SJWs and bots just to set up a narrative, and that they're under attack by a bunch of straight white dudes that are fielding guns and shooting up the place. When in reality, it's more of a case of them marching on to the bloody place in an abandoned building and are protesting. From what I've heard recently, the Hammond family does not want to make this an armed standoff, so they want to end this. So from the, let's see, where is it at? Give me a moment. The Oath Keepers. They have their own little blog on this.
Turning it on and off again. What happens when customer support doesn't work? People just take over buildings now. This is what happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This is the Oath Keepers. We cannot force ourselves or our protection on people who do not want it. Dwight and Stephen Hammond have made it clear, through their attorney, they just want to turn themselves in and serve out their sentence. And that clear statement of their intent should be the end of the discussion on this. No patriot group or individual has the right of the authority to force an armed standoff on this family or around them against their wishes. You cannot help someone who does not want your help and who are not willing and ready to take a hard stand themselves. Here's a video statement I made on the Hammond situation while at a recent Oath Keepers event in Idaho. Here's an even more recent audio video statement on this issue, where I'm joined by several Oath Keepers who are at the Bundy Ranch, Sugar Mine, Pine Mine, and other Oath Keeper operations. The written statement on the Hammond situation. I regret having to even make this statement, but I have no choice, since Ammon Bundy has not made it sufficiently clear to the Patriot community that the Hammond family has declined physical armed help, and by all indications does not want any kind of armed standoff with the federal government, and they do not want anyone to attempt to protect Dwight and Stephen Hammond from being taken into federal custody on Monday, January 4th, 2016, when they are scheduled to turn themselves in to serve additional time for their felony convictions, which came after a jury found them guilty. They intend to voluntarily turn themselves in and serve out the remainder of their sentence under federal minimum sentencing statutes after losing in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on that issue. In fact, they have made it very clear through a public statement by their lawyer in a letter to the sheriff dated December 11th, 2015, that neither Ammon Bundy nor anyone in his group organization seeks for the Hammond family, Dwight Hammond, or Stephen Hammond. In addition, I wish you to report to you, as recently ordered by the District Court, District of Oregon, Dwight Hammond and Stephen Hammond intend to voluntarily report to the designated federal facility on January 4th, 2016, as required. Unfortunately, Ammon Bundy has not made that clear, and despite Dwight and Stephen Hammond's decision to voluntarily report to federal custody, Ammon has issued a video titled Breaking Alert, Urgent Call to Action, All Call for All Patriots, Militias, Oath Keepers from Ammon Bundy Ranch. In that video, posted on December 29th, Ammon Bundy asked those who went to the Bundy Ranch now go to the town of Burns to make a stand, and he urges them to come to Burns and defend this family and defend this county. Here's a transcript of the last part of his video. I'm asking you, and I know who you are, you that came and you that felt to come to the Bundy Ranch. I'm asking you to come to Burns on January 2nd to make a stand. And I feel this is every bit, and in many ways more important, than the Bundy Ranch. I know that the abuses this family has endured is much greater than even the Bundy family. This is something that cannot be ignored. It has to happen now. We can't allow these violations to be so blatant and do nothing and expect that we will not be accountable for it. We will be accountable if we do not stand, and I'm asking you now to come to Burns and defend this family and to defend this county. Because it's not just the Hammonds that are being affected by this. They have put this whole country in depression. Now, pardon me. In the 80s, this county was a thriving county that the household income was higher than the national average, and the highest in the state of Oregon. Now, because of federal control of the resources, now Harney County is in economic depression. They're the lowest. They have the lowest income in the country, and it's $22,000 under the national average. $22,000 less than the national average, and it's because they have no access, very little access, to their national resources. It is time we make a stand, and I'm asking you to do that. And I want to thank you for your time, and thank you for listening, and I hope that you can feel the urgency of what I'm asking you to do. Emphasis added. And there's the video if you wanted to so view it. On his website, Ammon has recently posted, Call to action. We're asking all able-bodied men and women to come to Burns, Oregon, and come prepared. This is not a false warning. We must not be okay with what is happening to the people of Harney County. He then describes plans for a rally, march, and protest on Saturday, January 2nd, that will march through town and end by placing flowers in front of the Hammond family residence in town. That description sounds like it would be only a protest, and that is the apparent intent of the 3%er groups involved. But Ammon's rhetoric goes way beyond just a protest. For example, on December 11th, he posted, Please understand, we must exhaust all prudent measures before taking a physical stand against the horrific actions that the people of Harney County are enduring, including the Hammonds. If this notice is ignored, then one more notice of demand will be sent. It will list the many petitions that have been ignored and demand that the Hammonds' rights be restored. If that final notice is rejected, then people across the Union will have justification to assemble and once again restore individual rights, which is a bit of violent rhetoric.
Yeah.
So at the least,
Rhetoric.
keep in mind, this is a particular organization that tends to run quite a few of the militias involved. So keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah. Somebody said to me, they said, keep in mind the protest has multiple races. So you really can't call racist when it has multiple races. BTFO, bah, 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 bah.
Are people trying to say that the protest will only be composed of straight white dudes? Really now?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Goddamn retards.
People are telling me right now, they're sending me messages, they're like, yeah, they're busy digging on what's going on. They're blasting some nerds right now on the hashtag. I'm like, well, good for them.
Do it for the
Good for
lols.
that shit. Also, people are saying my audio's low. Well, it's specifically low because I just want Thidrin to be louder. It's all good.
There you go.
Okay, continue on.
Continuing on. So, at the least, Ammon is sending out confusing and contradictory messages of what he's asking people to do. And at the worst, he's planning on going far beyond a mere protest and intends some form of armed direct action. And despite all that, Ammon's making it known that Ammon does not speak for them and they intend to voluntarily report to federal custody. At the very least, Ammon needs to make it very clear what he's asking people to do, and he needs to make it clear that he's going against the clearly stated intent of the Hammonds. His rhetoric is all about taking a stand and defending the Hammonds from being taken into custody, and then going further and defending the entire county against the feds, despite serious opposition by the local community against any form of armed confrontation. Because the Hammond family does not want an armed standoff, and they wish to turn themselves in, Oath Keepers will not take part in any attempt to create a standoff in Burns, Oregon. Since Dwight and Stephen Hammond, through their attorney, have made it clear that they intend to turn themselves in and serve out the additional time, Oath Keepers cannot and will not try to interfere with that decision. Peaceful assembly and protest is, of course, fine, but going on beyond that against their wishes is not. We cannot force ourselves or the protection on people who do not want it. They have made it clear that they just want to turn themselves in and serve out their sentence, and that clear statement of their intent should be the end of the discussion on this. Fuck you. No, it is not the end of that. Because guess what? You're going to have to say it from your own mouths. You are not going to allow yourselves to get cucked by a motherfucking attorney who will likely lie to your punk ass. You're going to have to state it yourself.
Yeah.
If you're too much of a fucking coward to state it to these people to leave off, fuck you. It doesn't take that much effort. Get yourself off your sorry ass, make a 5-minute video, make a 10 minutes out freaking post it up on the internet somewhere where you're easily accessible, and be done with it. Rather than try and say, oh, I'm just going to say it through my attorney or through proxies, who are known to fucking lie.
Fucking serious? Are you fucking serious? Is this
So that's stupid as hell. In summation, the Oath Keepers here are going cuck my shit up here. I'm making fun of them there. This is dumb. Continuing on.
The Oath Keepers.
Yes, they are apparently being coerced and threatened, told not to communicate with Ammon or face dire consequences, as is done to anyone who runs afoul of the feds. But if they don't want their family in the middle of an armed standoff and have decided it is best to just go back to prison, no patriot group or individual has the right or the authority to force an armed standoff on the Hammond family or around them against their wishes. You cannot help someone who does not want your help and who are not willing and ready to take a hard stand themselves. Guess what, assholes? You can stand for them anyways. You don't have to associate with them. And that's why your argument fails right there. Fuck you. You do not have the right to tell these assholes what they want to do, even if they end up stating that they want to make these ridiculous actions, even if they want to go above and beyond the call of duty. You have no more right to tell them what they can do than they have a right to force onto the Hammonds themselves. You don't like it? Tough shit. Continuing on. In the Kim Davis situation, Oath Keepers offered her our protection against getting arrested again for attempt by order of the willful federal judge who is abusing his power. But Kim Davis, through her legal counsel, notes that pattern, declined our protection, and we have to respect her wishes and stand down and go home. It is the same here. The org cannot and will not force itself on a family who does not want the help. Sensing a pattern here, that's the message. It's like, we're not going to help them because they don't want our help. You can still stand up for the bloody principles. Don't like it? Tough shit.
All bark and no bite. This is
Exactly.
all bark and no bite. Literally, it's nothing. You're throwing nothing. You're writing paragraphs about nothing.
This
Fuck
has been
off.
filler. You could cut this bloody thing in half so far and it would still contain the same message. I am too much of a pussy to stand up. I am too much of a pussy to stand up, and fuck you. I'm still too much of a pussy to stand up, and if you say otherwise, fuck you, and so on and so forth. Continuing on. This org cannot and will not force itself on a family who does not want the help. We always get the consent of the person who is being threatened or oppressed before we take any action. Obviously, if someone is in the middle of being attacked with armed forces and are being murdered, patriots can and should defend them without waiting for them to ask for help. But that is not the case here. The Hammonds have had plenty of time to issue a call for armed help, and they have not. Instead, they have issued their statement of intent to comply with the court's order to turn themselves in. We went to Bundy Ranch after the Bundy family directly asked for help in their strong stand, and we went there specifically to prevent them from being Waco'd after we saw clear preparation participation and intent by the feds to use military-trained snipers and special forces veteran mercenaries against cowboys and their families. Likewise, the miners in Sugar Pine Mine in Oregon and the miners in Lincoln, Montana asked for our help, and we went there after seeing a pattern of behavior by the BLM of intentionally burning occupied cabins, drawing guns on miner, etc., that caused us to be concerned for the miners' physical safety, along with evidence that BLM agents intended to use force to remove the miners from their claims without due process. And in Ferguson, Missouri, we asked shop owners and residents if they wanted our protection, and only after they said yes did we deploy, rifles in hand, to guard them against deadly arsonists and violent looters. Without their consent, we would have had no right to go onto their rooftops. And just this year, in Idaho, our Idaho Oath Keepers joined with the Idaho 3%ers and other patriots to stand on the front lawn of a veteran who the VA had decreed unfit to handle his own affairs and therefore prohibited from owning firearms. The VA informed the veteran that they intended to inspect his home for firearms. This man's neighbors and other patriots in Idaho let it be known they would not let the VA enter this veteran's home or disarm him, and the VA backed off and issued a tractant of their finding. All of a sudden, the VA doctor decided that the veteran was competent after all. That was a righteous cause and a victory for the right to bear arms. But we only took action because he asked for help, because he was willing to stand with us, and because it was very clear and egregious violation of his fundamental rights. Without his consent and participation, we would not have acted. Sensing a pattern here.
Oh my god.
Oh, this one's going to be good at the bottom here, but
You need somebody's permission to get mad?
exactly.
What the fuck are these people?
Not of much use to me, it sounds like. Do I agree that they would need to do armed resistance? No.
You don't even need armed men anyway.
Continuing on, in addition to the fact that the Hammonds have not requested our help and intend to report to federal custody to serve out their additional sentence, there are also several other important differences between this situation and the Bundy Ranch. As stated above, at Bundy Ranch, we saw a very clear and present danger of imminent, unlawful, and excessive force being used against the Bundy ranching family, whose family home is always full of children and grandchildren. They were military-trained sniper teams, special forces, veteran contractors, and video footage of BLM agents tasing Ammon Bundy, sticking attack bombs on him, and throwing his elderly aunt to the ground. The feds also set up their absurd and disgusting First Amendment areas and tried to confine protesters to them, and arrested one of the Bundy sons for being outside of the tape-off designated protest area. All indicators were that the Bundys were at risk of being killed in a Rudy Ridge or Waco-type incident, and that is why we went, along with many other groups and individuals. After the Bundy family directly asked for help, and because the whole Bundy family and many of their cowboy friends and neighbors were willing to take a hard stand with the support of veterans and patriots, they prevailed. The feds blinked and backed off. That was a clear win for Team Liberty, while maintaining the moral high ground in the eyes of the great majority of patriotic Americans, which is exactly what... Did he really just make a PR fucking argument?
Yeah, he made a fucking PR fucking argument.
Fuck
This is fucking
you.
Disgusting.
They knew they had
It's
overstepped,
so disgusting.
that the optics were bad, they had severely underestimated the
No.
resolve and resistance, and could not win without using overwhelming military force. And they knew that if they tried to use that military force, as many leftists were screaming for them to do, the military would split at least in half, and many or most of the serving trigger pullers in the Million Court and armed infantry would have sided with the resistance, joining all of us pissed off veterans in the resulting civil war. In the Hammond case, there is no clear and present danger of the family being mass murdered. There is no standoff, and the family has no intent of starting one. They have apparently been threatened with being sent to the worst sections of prisons if they communicate with Hammond, and that is certainly an abuse of their rights, but they have chosen to not request assistance, to not take a physical stance against serving the additional sentence, and they have chosen to turn themselves in. We must respect that choice. If you want to protest, by all means do so. And I think going armed while you peacefully assemble and protest is perfectly within your rights, but beware agent provocateurs and hotheads. But do not allow yourselves to be roped into an armed standoff the Hammonds do not want. They have made their choice, and their neighbors are also unwilling to take a hard stand. Respect that, even if you disagree with them.
Wow.
Now, this is going to be the interesting bit. How the founders kicked off the American Revolution the right way. Those who intend to try to force this into some sort of far modern Lexington Green or Concord Bridge against the wishes of the Hammonds and their neighbors need to take a hard look at the founders' examples and their wisdom. The founders, even after the Boston Massacre, did not immediately take up arms and fight. They gave the Grand Parliament plenty of rope to hang themselves and show their true face to the colonists, and to drive more Americans over to the Patriot cause. The founders focused on smart resistance that poked at the ground and goaded them into further abuse of more of the American people, and goaded Gage into attacking as a clear aggressive to arrest the Patriot leaders and confiscate arms and ammunition. Even after General Gage was appointed rural governor over Massachusetts and placed Boston under martial law and suspended all town hall meetings throughout the Massachusetts colony, the Patriots still did not fire upon the King's troops. Instead, they formed militia and Minutemen companies in each town and county. They stored up ammunition, food, medicine, etc., for the coming resistance, and they organized and prepared an effective resistance movement at the town and county level, which included both public militia and underground Sons of Liberty cells. And they let the Crown piss off all the other citizens in Massachusetts with the egregious ban on town hall meetings, which the people ignored and intentionally violated, while daring Gage to try and stop them from meeting. And because they had formed a well-organized militia, they numbered in the tens of thousands, Gage knew he was powerless to stop those town hall meetings, as he made clear in his written request for more troops. The Patriots did not fire on the King's troops until General Gage ordered his men to march on Lexington and Concord to seize Hancock and Adams, and to confiscate guns, cannon, powder, and food supplies. In other words, the Patriot leadership had the discipline and wisdom to maneuver Gage into attempting wholesale gun confiscation, and that was the spark that fully justified armed resistance in the eyes of the greatest number of Americans at the time. By doing so, they retained the moral high ground. Note that phrasing. While also engaging the King's troops out in Patriot-dominated territory, where they were strong, well-organized, and vastly outnumbered the Redcoats. Thus, they kicked their ass all the way back to Boston. They poked Gage into vastly overstepping and stepping on his dick, as we would say today. And by doing so, they started the revolution with a win on all fronts. A military victory, a moral victory, and a morale victory. That is how you kick off a fight. And then they won a series of victories throughout 1775, which ended with Gage having to evacuate the British Army and Navy from Boston. And that is how you start off a revolution. In other words, this guy is taking a rather idealized take on said revolution because he assumes that people cannot be manipulated by the press, which is currently bought by various groups.
I got a question.
Shoot.
I got a question. Okay. Did the militia back then, during the Boston Tea Party era, ask the Boston Tea Party for permission to get angry?
No. This is why this guy is a moron. You don't have to ask permission. You have to stand for your own principles. If your own principles preclude you to do what you gotta do, you do what you gotta do. Just keep in mind that if you break the law and whatnot, you accept the consequences of your law breaking. As long as you do that and you get right on your own self, go for it. But don't try and blame other people if you fuck it up.
Yeah. Just fucking dumb.
But you don't need no motherfucker to tell you what's right and what's wrong. You need to figure out what's right and what's wrong for yourself. That's what the problem is with a bunch of these hacks. Do I advocate for armed resistance? Hell no. Not at this situation. Would I advocate for heavily armed protesting? Yes. Especially if certain provocateurs want to start some shit.
Yeah.
If it ends up being violent, so be it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'd prefer it not to be a Waco situation, though. But if the Hammonds are currently being coerced by their shitty attorney, who's probably lying to them at this point, then it might behoove certain members to contact said family, have a chat, point out some of the recent bullshit that's been going on, and if they end up trying to serve their sentence, they might not have a home whenever they come back. And I don't mean just because of their wives.
Yeah, that's why we're not going to have their land when they come back. That's why they want them in jail. So they can just fucking take all that fucking land and all the precious resources that they have.
Now, here's his PR argument here. He used that past one that was already flawed and was already completely fucking retarded because of the obvious. Here's his plan on this. Let Obama and his fellow traveler Marxist buddies step on their dicks on the gun issue and make a hard stand to resist on that. All of you who are impatient and itching for a fight, put your thinking caps on and use your heads. Keep your cool and don't worry, the fight will come to you soon enough. Obama and the other anti-gun idiot politicians, such as the governor of Connecticut, will not be able to resist the temptation to attempt to violate our right to bear arms by executive decree. By the way, there's already having that issue. Such as barring anyone put on the no-fly list and other government watch lists from owning guns, which would include me, by the way, as I am on Aviation Security Watch List and get a special SSSS designation every time I fly. I can't even check in and get a boarding pass from the ticket agent without the airlines calling DHS for permission to let me fly, which usually takes a half an hour. And I get the full Monty screening and groping each time. Clearly, their intent is to eventually put all of you dangerous veterans, patriots, and constitutionalists on such watch lists. Designate you as someone who is barred from owning guns, and then use that to disarm you, one at a time. And they actually think we will just roll over and let them do that. The idiotic Connecticut governor, Malloy, is paving the fast track to the next American Civil War/revolution, which is planned to sign an executive order precluding those on the government watch list from purchasing or owning firearms. See this and this. He's actually planning on confiscating the guns of anyone who lives in Connecticut who the feds put on one of their many watch lists. Who can be on those lists? Anyone and everyone. What is the criteria of being put on such a list? Who knows? What due process is there? None. And Malloy thinks the gun owners of Connecticut, who have already refused to comply with his prior edicts on guns, will just comply and be disarmed. What a delusional fool. He's poking a hornet's nest while smiling for the cameras. And eventually, all of us, across this nation, who dare to stand for liberty and the Constitution will be on one list or another, and that's what is being done in Connecticut will be done in other states and at the national level too. See, this is a bit of a problem, this guy. He's a little bit behind the times by a factor of years. Obama's already trying to cram that shit through himself, not simply a fucking governor of Connecticut. Fucking retard.
Because Obama's a fucking shithead and people are PMing me a bunch, so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Obama's just a piece of shit. Like, he just fucking crammed everything down people's throats because we're on the wrong side of history.
Don't even
He's
get
on
me
the right
started
side
on
of
that shit.
You're on the wrong side of history, guys. You need to get on the right side.
Yeah, it's a fucking mess.
You will eventually lose, but, you know, I'm not going to do anything about it to try to stop you. This is pretty much the most retarded shit ever.
Yeah. Obama is also considering an executive order decreeing background checks on private gun sales, and anti-gun weenies in New York want to restrict how much ammo New York State residents can buy. And in California, police have now been given the green light to unilaterally disarm anyone they don't think should have a gun, or they're on their say-so, alone, without the person even knowing about it or having a day in court, through gun violence restraining orders, GVROs. Good! Bring it. Let Obama and the other hoplophobes step on their dicks, with both feet with cleats on, and organize local resistance to help gun owners like the old vet in Idaho who are willing to take a hard stand, and put your muscle behind that hard stand on the critical issue of guns in your own community. The three most important questions you have to enter on who's on your buddy team, who's on your fire team, who's on your squad. Get organized, get trained, get equipped, and help your neighbors unite in mutual defense and help train them. Form Minuteman companies and quick reaction forces in your town and country. Then let them, an amorphous them, come and try to take your guns. Make that the modern Lexington and Concord. And we'll have the greatest number of Americans on our side and the greatest number of the current serving military on our side as possible. See, again, this guy doesn't get it. All they're going to do is label you a motherfucking terrorist, and then they'll let you hang yourselves as terrorists, because all they're going to do is continuously marginalize you and demonize you month in and month out, year in and year out, because you don't have the same resources they do. You are stuck fighting a guerrilla action, not even a colonist action, because the power differential is that fucking high. That is why this guy is stupid. You were attempting to fight a conventional war.
Yeah, you need like up my volume on TeamSpeak. You need to like right click my name and hit change volume, turn me up.
I'll turn you up,
bro. I'm getting fucking messages and shit, and they're fucking pissing me off.
There, plus 7
Stop
decibels.
messaging me. Okay,
There.
let me see if anybody can hear me.
All right, you goobers. I'm almost done on the positive side. Then we can do some audience participation, chill out, and leave. Anyways, finishing up this particular post. That is how you do it. Not by trying to force the people of Harney County, Oregon to take a stand they apparently don't want to take over land use issues most Americans don't even understand, and which rural America as a whole essentially gave up on long ago. Just a sad fact. Decades ago they rolled over and with few exceptions let the use of their land be stripped them by activist judges and federal agents with the blessing of the U.S. Congress. It will take time and lots of hard work at the local level to organize, educate, and create serious, lasting, and effective local resistance on those land use issues in rural America. We should certainly do that, but it will not be done overnight. I think the gun issue is a far, far stronger one to focus on this time when it comes to hard stands. For the Republic, Stuart Rhodes, founder and president of the Oath Keepers. In other words, he's being a bit of a cuck.
Dude, he is so fucking cucked, and he's just like, If you get in my way, I'm gonna use the PR machine on you. Oh my god.
Guess what, asshole? I don't give a fuck about PR. Never gave a fuck about PR. Never will give a fuck about PR as far as you're concerned.
Alright, so what's next? So this happened, and what made it turn into a thing that just, people are writing on the news now about it?
Well,
On
isn't it
mainstream
obvious?
Media. Why did it switch over? Okay.
Because people ended up
You're gonna have to explain to stupid people.
because people want clicks. That's as simple as that. They want their money. They want their popularity and the eyeballs to see it. Fresh event hits. People look into it. More people look into it as they get a rather egregious spin, which is why you're getting lots of polarization on this particular issue, and why you're getting a bunch of Twitter bots to just spam that when Oregon under attack in an effort to get it to trend, which it did. And now you got a bunch of SJWs trying to proclaim that the people, like black people and these guys were doing wrong, when in reality, they aren't really doing that much wrong other than trespassing. Currently, it might end up changing.
Oh man, this is so fucked. They're just getting completely demonized. Oh my god, it's like PR is just the government strong arm. That's all
Ma
it is
PR.
now, isn't it?
That's
all
what it is.
The government calls up their mainstream media buddies, and they're like, "We need a story on this now. We need to make these people, feel guilty about what they did." God fucking damn it.
It is such trash. And
So
keep
you got all these targets. Oh fuck, go ahead. I'm getting mad.
what's up? You go ahead.
I just lost my thought.
You
Shit.
goober.
I just lost it. You made me lose my thoughts.
Ha, rumph.
Yeah, you said keep in mind some shit.
Keep in mind that
Yeah.
the narratives are incoming. They will probably be hit within a few hours. They're going to do their level best to paint them as terrorists, the Hammonds as well as the 150. They are at the same time on image boards. They are associating them with FBI agents who have been known to be agent provocateurs in an effort to inform for the FBI and thus discredit them that way. So, keep in mind, shills play both sides. Do not be a fucking retard. Take your time to look for the truth. The issue is more nuanced than you might like to think, so please, whatever you do not fall into polarization.
Yeah, I almost got capped the
User entered your
traps on
channel.
fucking Twitter. You know what happens when people cap the trap you is like when they
Yep.
just constantly try to keep you in debate without the hashtag on it. That's how you know you're being capped the trapped on Twitter.
Oh, goody. It looks like a few people did try to talk to me earlier on.
Yeah. Like, I'm telling you, like there's some shit
User
going down. You
disconnected
gotta
from your channel.
fucking, you gotta get on that shit, Didrin.
Except that they are about, almost an hour. Haven't really talked to me about it.
Some guy named John Kelly said in there. He says, "Is it taking over a federal building via armed resistance an act of terrorism?"
Probably is. Well, not really.
Taking over an empty building is an act of terrorism.
Mm,
We need to build a wall, guys.
Yep, build a wall. You have to go.
Oh my god.
Well, sort of people
know,
having questions
saw
about the
this-
issue itself.
Yeah, there's some questions, but the reason why we're live streaming this entire fucking thing is because we already saw opposition try to push a narrative that is already skewing people's minds. So we have to put something out on YouTube to basically fuck with people's judgment, and that's about it.
Yep. We were
Pretty
just
fun.
yeah,
Pretty
we're
fun
just
to do
wrapping
that.
it up. This was basically
Somebody
a
has
reading
to-
of reading a fact, or as far as I know, as well as watching of a video that seems to have kicked off this latest spat. And if people want to refute it and argue over the facts of the matter, feel free. That is pretty much what little I know as far as Oregon under attack.
Yeah.
Not much else to it. Figure we'll just wrap it up here. Anyone else want to say something before I wrap this sucker up?
If anybody, oh, yeah. Gas the kikes, race war now.
God damn it, why do you always say that?
It's the very end. Might as well.
Dick. Alright, well, if you want me to talk more on it, feel free. Use this if you want. Maybe do a little more digging into it. Might help. Can't hurt.
I want you guys to make your own videos. That is my call to action to you. I want you guys to go out there and make your own videos.
The only thing that'll be funnier is if this stream doesn't work.
PR faggots speaking for you. You
Exactly.
don't want these PR faggots talking for you. I want you to get your right-wing death squads together and start making videos.
Pretty much. Do what you gotta do, alright?
Yeah. Panda, yeah. Somebody else needs to start streaming. We're good, Sid. Close the
Alright.
stream. Shut
Closing it
down.
off.
Shut
Take it easy,
Shut
yo.
it down.
Bye. Oh
Shut it
no.
down.
Stopping.